A story of silent courage, friends. Let me share with you a tale that still echoes through the dusty streets of Copper Ridge, Wyoming. It happened back in 1883 when the West was still wild and folks judged a person by what they could see, not what they couldn't understand. This is about Emma McAllister, a woman who couldn't hear a gunshot but could feel a heartbeat from across a room. And Jake Morrison, a drifter who spoke with his hands better than most men spoke with their mouths. Now, I'm not one for fairy tales or fancy words. This here's the truth, raw as prairie wind. It's about what happens when a whole town decides someone don't belong, and how sometimes the quietest love speaks the loudest. Pull up a chair and pour yourself something strong. You're gonna need it. The morning Jake Morrison found Emma McAllister unconscious on her kitchen floor, blood seeping from a gash above her eyebrow, was the morning everything changed in Copper Ridge. He'd only come to return her sewing shears, left behind when she'd mended his coat yesterday. The door hung ajar, unusual for Emma, who kept everything locked tight. Living alone as a deaf woman in 883 Wyoming meant taking no chances. Jake pushed inside, his boots crunching on scattered flour. The kitchen looked like a tornado had torn through. Chairs overturned, preserves smashed against the walls, Emma's precious sewing machine thrown sideways off the table, and Emma herself, crumpled near the stove, her brown dress torn at the shoulder. Jesus Christ! Jake dropped to his knees, checking for breath. Alive. Thank God. Alive. He pressed his bandana against the wound, his other hand searching for more injuries. Her knuckles were split and swollen. She'd fought back hard. Through the window, he spotted Mrs. Hartley watching from across the street, arms folded, making no move to help. Other neighbors gathered on their porches, whispering behind hands, but not one soul stepped forward. Jake scooped Emma into his arms. She weighed nothing, bird bones and determination. The doctor's house sat 3 blocks away. But as Jake carried her down Main Street, something twisted in his gut. People weren't just watching, they were satisfied. About time someone taught that woman her place. Mr. Clarence muttered loud enough to hear. Jake's jaw clenched, but he kept walking. Emma's blood soaked through his shirt, warm and accusing. Dr. Wilson answered on the 3rd knock, took one look, and ushered them inside. Set her on the table. Quick now. As the doctor worked, cleaning and stitching, Jake signed unconsciously. Who did this to you? She can't see you. Son, she's out cold. Doc Wilson didn't look up from his work. Though I'm curious how a drifter knows sign language. Jake ignored the question. This wasn't random. Her house was ransacked, but nothing stolen. Someone wanted to hurt her specifically. Wouldn't surprise me. The doctor's voice carried bitter experience. Emma's been a target since she came here 5 years back. Deaf woman, living alone, making her own money. That threatens folks. Threatens how Doc Wilson tied off the last stitch. Their wives see Emma surviving without a man's protection. Starts giving them ideas. The menfolk don't like ideas. Emma stirred, eyes fluttering open. The moment she saw Jake, her hands moved frantically. The ledger. They took my ledger. Jake caught her hands, gently. What ledger? Her signs came fast, panicked. Where I keep records, everyone's debts. Who really owns what in this town? The doctor and Jake exchanged glances. In a cash-poor frontier town, Emma's detailed records of who owed what to whom would be dynamite. She'd been quietly documenting the real economy of Copper Ridge, the IOUs, the under-the-table deals, the property transfers that happened with handshakes instead of papers. That's why you were attacked, Jake signed back. Someone's scared of what you know. Emma nodded, then winced at the movement. She signed slower now. Mrs. Hartley's husband, the mayor, he's been selling land that's not his. I have proof. Jake stood abruptly. I'm getting Sheriff Coleman. Emma grabbed his sleeve, shaking her head violently. Her signs were sharp. Sheriff's in on it. Saw him at my door last night with two others. Ran out the back, hid in the root cellar there. Came back this morning, thinking they'd gone. Then we go to the federal marshal in Cheyenne. With what proof they have my ledger now? Jake paced the small surgery. Thinking, Doc Wilson cleaned his instruments, pretending not to watch the signed conversation he couldn't follow. Finally, Jake turned back to Emma. You're smart. You didn't keep just one copy. A ghost of a smile crossed Emma's battered face. She signed, under the loose floorboard, behind the stove they knocked over. Then we get it tonight. Too dangerous. They'll be watching. Not we. Me? Jake's signs were firm. You stay here with Doc Wilson. Emma struggled to sit up, signing emphatically, my house, my fight. Our fight now. Jake's hands moved with quiet certainty. They made it ours when they spilled your blood. The silence stretched between them, loaded with unspoken meaning. Doc Wilson cleared his throat. If you're planning what I think you're planning, you'll need help. There's a few of us in town who've been waiting for someone to stand up to Hartley's bunch. Jake looked at the old doctor with new respect. How many? Maybe a dozen? Mostly farmers Hartley's cheated. Couple of shopkeepers tired of paying protection money. Wilson pulled out a bottle of whiskey, poured 3 glasses. Question is, son, why do you care you've been here barely 2 months? This ain't your fight. Jake accepted the glass but didn't drink. His eyes stayed on Emma as he spoke aloud. My sister was deaf. Died because the town decided she wasn't worth saving when scarlet fever came through. Doctor treated everyone else first. By the time he got to her, he knocked back the whiskey in one burning swallow. I learned sign language too late to tell her I loved her. Emma's eyes filled with tears. She reached out, touched Jake's hand, and signed, she knew. The moment hung crystalline between them until Doc Wilson coughed. Sun's setting. If you're going for that ledger, best do it now while folks are at supper. Jake stood. Checked the Colt at his hip. If I'm not back in an hour, I'll raise hell. Wilson promised. Got my own rifle and know how to use it. Emma caught Jake's arm as he turned to leave. Her signs were small. Private, be careful, please. He covered her hands with his, squeezing gently. Then he was gone, slipping into the deepening shadows of Copper Ridge's dusty streets. From her bed, Emma watched through the window as darkness swallowed him. Her fingers moved in prayer or curse. She wasn't sure which anymore. All she knew was that the quiet man who'd walked into her life 8 weeks ago carrying a torn saddle was now walking into danger for her. Doc Wilson sat beside her, notepad in hand. He wrote, He's not what he seems. Is he? Emma took the pencil, wrote back, No one ever is. That's not an answer. She considered, then wrote, First day he came. He signed, Sorry for disturbing you in Philadelphia dialect ASL. Not Western signs, not self-taught, formal training. So, only 3 schools in America teach that dialect, all back east, all expensive. Emma met the doctor's eyes. Jake Morrison isn't just some drifter. Question is, what's he really doing in Copper Ridge? Through the window, a gunshot cracked the evening air. Then another, and another. Emma lunged for the door, but Doc Wilson held her back. No, child, we wait, we trust, and we get ready for whatever comes through that door. He pulled a shotgun from behind his desk, loaded it with practiced efficiency. Emma found his surgical knife, gripped it tight. Together, they waited as Copper Ridge erupted in chaos outside, and the night filled with mysteries that would either save them all or destroy everything Emma had built in her silent world. The clock on the wall ticked toward the hour mark. Jake had been gone 43 minutes, and the gunfire was getting closer. Before we continue, please leave a like and subscribe. Let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. Emma's knuckles went white around the surgical knife. 47 minutes now. The gunfire had stopped. Worse than the shooting somehow. Doc Wilson's breathing wheezed beside her, shotgun barrel trembling against his knee. Bootsteps on the porch, heavy, multiple sets. The door handle turned. Jake stumbled through, shirt torn, knuckles raw. Behind him, two men Emma recognized, Samuel the blacksmith, Thomas who ran the feed store, both carried rifles. Jake's signs came fast. Got it, but Hartley knows. Coming now with 8 men. Emma grabbed the pencil, wrote, how long at 10 minutes, maybe less. Samuel spoke up, voice rough. Mrs. Hartley went to the sheriff's house, saw her through the window, crying and carrying on about thieves and murderers. Doc Wilson stood, joints popping. Then we're outlaws now. Only if we lose. Jake pulled Emma's ledger from inside his shirt, pages damp with sweat. Thomas, you know anyone at the telegraph office? My nephew works nights. Good. We need... Glass shattered. The front window exploded inward. Emma dropped, pulling Jake down with her. Fragments scattered across Doc Wilson's clean floor. Dr. Wilson, Mayor Hartley's voice boomed from outside. Send out the thieving whore and her accomplice. No need for you to hang alongside them. Jake started to rise, but Emma yanked him back, signing, Wait! She crawled to Wilson's desk, pulled paper and pen. Her hand moved quick and sure across the page. Jake read over her shoulder as she wrote, Federal Marshal James Kennedy, Cheyenne Mayor Robert Hartley, illegally sold government land plots, 762 along Copper Creek. Sheriff Coleman complicit, proof enclosed, multiple witnesses, come immediately. Emma McAllister, Copper Ridge. She folded the telegram message around 2 pages, torn from her ledger. The most damning evidence. Thomas, Jake hissed, can your nephew send this tonight, if I can get it to him? Back door, Doc Wilson whispered. Through my garden, connects to the alley behind the general store. Another window shattered. Smoke began seeping under the front door. The acrid stench of kerosene filled Emma's nostrils. Jake's eyes went wide. They're going to burn us out. Emma stood, decision made. She signed, I go out front, no distraction, you run back, dummies. Like hell. She pressed the telegram into Thomas's hands, then moved toward the front door. Jake lunged for her, but Samuel caught his arms. Emma's hand touched the door handle. The wood already felt warm. Behind her, Jake's voice cracked. Emma, no. She turned, signed once. Trust me. The smoke thickened. Someone outside was laughing. Mayor Hartley called out again. 30 seconds. Doc. Emma's fingers found something in her dress pocket. Something small, metal. She smiled. Ah! The metal in Emma's pocket, Doc Wilson's whistle, the one he used to call his horse. Her thumb traced its smooth surface. She pulled it out, held it up for Jake to see, then pointed at the back door. His eyes narrowed, understanding flooding his face. Emma yanked the door open. Heat slammed into her like a physical wall. The porch boards glowed with spreading kerosene flames. Mayor Hartley stood 20 feet away, pistol raised. 8 men spread behind him in a half circle. Sheriff Coleman on the right, badge glinting orange in the firelight. Emma raised both hands, whistle concealed in her right palm. She couldn't hear Hartley speaking, but saw his mouth moving, ugly and triumphant. His pistol gestured for her to come forward. She stepped onto the burning porch. Heat seared through her thin boots. The flames hadn't reached the steps yet, another few seconds maybe. Behind Hartley, she spotted Mrs. Hartley in their carriage, face pale in the darkness. Emma brought the whistle to her lips and blew. No sound, not for her. But Hartley's men flinched, heads turning, and from the stable next to Doc Wilson's house, his stallion burst through the poorly latched door, eyes rolling white with fear from the fire smell. 800 pounds of panicked horse charged straight through Hartley's line. Men dove sideways. Sheriff Coleman's shot went wild, shattering a window somewhere behind Emma. The stallion's shoulder caught one man, spinning him into the dirt. Emma ran, not forward into the chaos, but sideways, vaulting the porch rail into Doc Wilson's garden. Her dress caught, tearing from knee to hip. She hit the ground hard, rolled, came up running. Behind the house now, crashing through corn stalks. Jake's hand caught hers in the darkness, pulled her into the alley. They ran together, her bare feet slipping on garbage, his arm tight around her waist when she stumbled. Thomas and Samuel ahead, Doc Wilson wheezing behind. They burst into the back of the general store. Thomas locked the door, shoved a shelf against it. Through the front windows, Emma saw men running past, shouting. The orange glow of Doc Wilson's burning house painted everything hellish. Jake's hands moved in the darkness. Telegraph office, now. Thomas led them through his store, between pickle barrels and fabric bolts, out another door into a connecting passage Emma never knew existed, the telegraph office back room, where Thomas's nephew Billy sat wide-eyed at his desk. "Uncle Tom, what's—" Thomas shoved the message at him. "Send this, now, to Cheyenne." Billy's fingers hesitated over the key. But Mr. Hartley said, Samuel's rifle barrel pressed against the desk. "Say, boy, you send that message or I'll break every finger you got." The key started clicking, dots and dashes filling the small room. Emma watched Billy's face, reading his lips as he muttered each letter, her message flying through wire and darkness toward Cheyenne. The clicking stopped. Billy looked up. "Sent. Response?" Jake demanded. "Takes time. Maybe an hour before." The door exploded inward. Sheriff Coleman filled the frame, scattergun leveled. "Well now, this makes it easy." Emma saw Jake's hand move toward his Colt. Too slow. Coleman's finger tightened on the trigger. The gunshot was enormous in the small room. But Coleman's scattergun never fired. He looked down at the red spreading across his shirt, confused, then toppled forward. Mrs. Hartley stood in the doorway behind him, her husband's pearl-handled Derringer smoking in her grip. Everyone froze. Mrs. Hartley stepped over Coleman's body, her green dress careful to avoid the pooling blood. She looked at Emma, and her lips moved clearly. "I've been keeping my own ledger, Miss McAllister. 20 years of that man's sins. Sheriff Coleman helped him kill my father for his land when I was 17. She set a leather journal on the telegraph desk. "Everything's in there, including how they murdered your husband, Miss McAllister. Made it look like he abandoned you." Emma's knees buckled. Jake caught her, held her upright. Her husband hadn't left her, hadn't chosen to abandon a deaf wife. They'd killed him. Mrs. Hartley continued, lips precise. "My husband will run now. He's a coward without Coleman. But he has friends in Cheyenne who might intercept your telegraph." She pulled another paper from her bodice. "Second message. To Federal Marshal Kennedy's home address. My cousin married his daughter. This will reach him." Billy's fingers flew over the keys again. Outside, shouting grew closer. Boots thundered on boardwalks. Where will you go? Doc Wilson asked Mrs. Hartley. Denver. My sister runs a boarding house there. She looked at Emma again. I'm sorry. For all of it, I was too afraid for too long. She walked out the back door, disappearing into the darkness just as the front window shattered. Mayor Hartley's voice roared from the street. You killed a lawman. You'll all hang. Jake checked his Colt. 5 shots left. Samuel had maybe 10 rifle rounds. Against 8 men, now 7 with Coleman down. Emma pulled the surgical knife from her pocket. Its weight felt like nothing, like everything. They're coming in, Thomas whispered, backing away from the window. Emma watched Jake's isofot in the lamplight, watched him calculate odds that didn't calculate. His eyes met hers, and his hands signed 3 words she'd never expected, 3 words that changed everything. The front door started to splinter under someone's boot. Jake's 3 signed words hung in the air. Get behind me. Not what Emma expected, not what she wanted. Her fingers moved to argue, but the door crashed inward, splinters flying. Mayor Hartley filled the doorway, pistol raised, face twisted with rage in the lamplight. Jake fired first. The Colt bucked in his hand. Hartley spun sideways, clutching his shoulder, stumbling back into the street. Men scattered behind him. The desk. Samuel shoved Emma down as rifle fire erupted. The telegraph equipment exploded above her head, brass and wood fragments raining down. Billy screamed, hand pressed to his bleeding cheek. Emma crawled to him, pressed her torn dress fabric against the wound. The boy's mouth moved, crying for his mother, probably. She held him steady while bullets punched through the thin walls. Jake crouched beside the window, counting muzzle flashes. 4 men firing from behind water troughs, 2 more moving along the side alley. Where was the 7th Samuel's rifle cracked twice? A man tumbled from behind the trough, didn't get up, running low. Samuel ejected spent casings, maybe 6 rounds left. The gunfire stopped. Hartley's voice carried from the street. You're done, Morrison. We got you boxed, bah. Send out the deaf bitch, and we might let the rest of you live. Jake looked at Emma. She shook her head, pointed at the back door, then held up 7 fingers. The 7th man, he'd be covering the rear exit by now. Doc Wilson pulled Coleman's scattergun from the dead sheriff's grip, checked the loads. 2 shells. The old doctor's hands shook, but his jaw set firm. Thomas grabbed a claw hammer from beneath the counter, knuckles white around the handle. Emma felt the floorboards vibrate. Footsteps on the roof. She grabbed Jake's arm, pointed up. His eyes followed, understanding immediately. The telegraph office had a skylight for daytime operations, painted over but thin glass. Jake signed, how many rounds? Samuel held up 5 fingers. Jake had 4 left in the Colt. Doc Wilson's 2 shells, against 6 men now, with high ground advantage. Emma's fingers found the puddle of Coleman's blood, still warm and spreading. She dipped both hands in it, then stood. Emma? No. Jake reached for her, but she'd already moved to the center of the room, directly under the skylight. She smeared the blood across her face, her neck, her torn dress, then collapsed to her knees, throwing her head back in what would look like a death scream to anyone watching. Her mouth open wide, silent to her, but visible to the man above. The skylight shattered. A man dropped through, boots first, landing hard beside her. Emma's surgical knife went in just below his ribs, angled up. His mouth opened in shock. She twisted the blade, felt things separate inside him. He dropped, gun clattering away. Jake shot the 2nd man coming through the skylight. The body fell half in, half out, blocking the opening. Front, Samuel yelled. The street-facing window exploded. 3 men charged through. Doc Wilson's scattergun boomed, taking the first one center mass. The 2nd man's rifle swing caught Samuel in the jaw, dropping him. Jake's Colt clicked empty. The 3rd man through was Hartley. Bloody shoulder and all, his pistol aimed at Emma's head. Thomas's hammer caught Hartley in the temple. The mare dropped like a poleaxed steer. Thomas hit him again to be sure. The second attacker spun toward Thomas. Emma threw the surgical knife. It caught him in the throat. He grabbed at it, stumbling backward. Arterial spray painting the wall. Silence. Emma's chest heaved. Blood, not hers, dripped from her fingers. Jake's hands shook as he reloaded the Colt with Coleman's spare rounds. Samuel groaned from the floor, jaw already swelling. Billy whimpered in the corner, still pressing the cloth to his face. Doc Wilson checked Hartley's pulse. Alive, barely. 3 men dead in the room. Hartley unconscious. 1 dead in the street from Samuel's rifle. 2 more out there somewhere. Emma moved to the window, peered out. The 2 remaining men were backing away, hands raised. One called out, "We're done. We quit, just hired guns. This ain't our fight." They mounted horses, rode hard toward the town limits. Jake's hand touched Emma's shoulder. She turned. His face was spattered with blood whose she couldn't tell. His hand signed, "You all right?" She nodded. Then her knees gave out. Jake caught her, pulled her against him. She felt his heart hammering against her ribs, fast as hers. His hands tangled in her bloody hair, holding her tight. Movement in the doorway. 3 townspeople peered in the baker, the Methodist minister, the woman who ran the boarding house. Their faces showed shock, fear, but something else. Respect, maybe. The telegraph key suddenly clattered to life. Everyone turned. To Billy, one hand still pressed to his bleeding face, leaned over the destroyed equipment. Part of it still functioned. Somehow, his good eye widened as he read the incoming message. "It's from Cheyenne? Marshal Kennedy." Billy's voice cracked. Says he's coming. Tomorrow. With 6 deputies and a federal judge. Jake signed to Emma. "We won." Well, she shook her head, pointed at Mayor Hartley stirring on the floor, groaning, then at the door where more townspeople gathered. Some looked relieved, others hostile. The town was split, and 1 telegram wouldn't change that. Her hands ran not over. Doc Wilson knelt beside Hartley, checking his skull. Fractured. Probably. He'll live to hang. No. A new voice from the door. Mrs. Clarence, the banker's wife, pushed through the crowd. She carried a shotgun. "He knows too much about all of us. What we've done, what we've allowed." She raised the gun toward Hartley's unconscious form. Jake stepped between them. "Federal marshals coming. Let the law." "The law." Mrs. Clarence laughed, bitter and sharp. Where was the law when Hartley foreclosed on the widow Thompson because she wouldn't bed him? Where was it when Coleman beat my boy for looking at his daughter? More people pushed into the room, some nodding agreement with Mrs. Clarence, others shaking their heads. Emma recognized the divide, those who'd profited from Hartley's corruption versus those who'd suffered under it. Thomas spoke up. "We wait for the marshal. Do this legal." "Legal?" Mrs. Clarence's voice rose. "Like the legal deed Hartley had when he took my father's ranch." The crowd pressed closer. Someone shoved. Someone else shoved back. The room felt like a powder keg, one spark from exploding. Emma looked at Jake. His hand rested on his Colt. But what good would 6 bullets do against a mob Doc Wilson backed against the wall? Billy, trembling beside him. Samuel struggled to stand, jaw too swollen to speak. That's when Emma noticed something that made her blood freeze. Hartley's eyes were open, watching, and his hand was moving slowly, so slowly, toward the derringer, fallen from his wife's grip. His fingers closed around it, just as Emma opened her mouth to warn Jake. But what came out wasn't silence. The sound that tore from Emma's throat was raw, animal, a grinding rasp like rusted metal, scraping stone. Every head turned. Even Hartley froze. Derringer half raised. Jake spun, saw the gun. dove sideways. The Derringer cracked. The bullet caught Jake's shoulder, spinning him into the telegraph desk. Blood splattered across the remaining equipment. Emma lunged for Hartley. Her hands found his wrist, bent it back. The Derringer fired again, into the ceiling. Plaster dust rained down. She drove her knee into his broken ribs, felt them shift under the impact. His scream cut through the room. Mrs. Clarence's shotgun swung toward them. "Move, girl!" Emma didn't move. She pressed harder on Hartley's wrist until bones ground together. The Derringer dropped. She kicked it away, then rolled Hartley onto his stomach, planted her knee between his shoulder blades. Jake pushed himself up, left arm hanging useless, blood soaking his shirt. His right hand still held the Colt. He aimed it at Mrs. Clarence. "Put it down. You're protecting him. After everything, not protecting who." Jake's voice came through clenched teeth. "Making sure we do this right, or we're no better." The crowd pressed closer. Emma counted faces, maybe 20 now. The baker's wife held a rolling pin. The barbershop owner gripped his straight razor. Fierce sweat and kerosene stench filled the room. Doc Wilson pushed through, medical bag in hand. "Let me see that shoulder, Jake." "Later." "Now, or you'll bleed out." The doctor tore Jake's shirt, packed gauze against the wound. Jake never lowered the Colt from Mrs. Clarence. Emma felt Hartley breathing beneath her knee, rapid and shallow. His blood from the shoulder wound pooled on the floor, mixing with Coleman's. Oh. The room stank of copper and gunpowder. The telegraph clattered again. Billy read, voice shaking. "Marshal Kennedy, leaving now, riding through night, hold prisoners for federal custody." Prisoners? Mrs. Clarence spat the word. "They'll take him to Cheyenne. Some fancy lawyer will get him off." "Not with my wife's testimony." Hartley's voice came muffled against the floor. "She took my seal, my papers, probably halfway to Denver by now." Emma's fingers found the nerve cluster at the base of Hartley's neck, pressed hard. He writhed, tried to buck her off. She pressed harder. Thomas stepped forward. "We lock him up. Wait for the marshal." "The jail's burned." This from the barber. "You all didn't notice Coleman's boys torched it an hour ago. Thought they'd won." Jake steadied himself against the desk. "Then we guard him here. Take shifts." With what authority? Mrs. Clarence's shotgun hadn't wavered. "You're just a drifter. She's a deaf woman. Who made you law?" "Nobody made us nothing." St. Samuel's voice came thick through his swollen jaw. He'd retrieved his rifle, leaned on it like a crutch. "But they stood when everyone else sat. That's authority enough for me." The crowd murmured, some agreement, some dissent. Emma watched faces, read lips. The banker's son saying they should let the federal law handle it. The livery owner arguing Hartley would escape. Had friends everywhere. Movement outside caught her eye. Horses. 3 riders dismounting in the street. Not townspeople, their dusters too long, boots too worn. One carried a sawed-off shotgun. She slapped the floor 3 times, sharp. Jake understood immediately, moved to the window. His face went tight. Hartley's backup. The hired guns from Laramie he bragged about. Mrs. Clarence laughed, bitter. "See his friends come to spring him. This is why we finish it now." The lead rider stepped into the doorway, shotgun casual in his hands, face weathered like old leather, eyes scanning the room. They stopped on Hartley, pinned beneath Emma. "Mayor Hartley?" The man's voice carried a southern drawl. "Paid us half up front. Seems you need that help now." Jake's Colt swung toward him. "Back off." The man smiled. "Son, I got 2 men outside with rifles. You got 1 working arm and a room full of shopkeepers. How you think this plays out?" Emma felt Hartley tense beneath her, getting ready to try something. She shifted her weight, grinding his face harder into the floor. Blood from his nose added to the puddle. Doc Wilson spoke up. "Federal marshal's coming. You boys want to add killing a federal witness to your crimes? What marshal? All I see is local trouble." The gunman stepped further inside. "We take a Hartley, collect our money, ride on. Nobody else needs dying. I need dying, apparently." Hartley's voice came out wet, muffled. "These animals attacked me. Killed Sheriff Coleman. Sheriff was dirty." The gunman shrugged. "But money's money." Jake steadied the Colt with both hands, though his left trembled. "You take him, he disappears. No justice for what he's done." "Justice?" The gunman laughed. "In Wyoming, boy, justice is who's left standing." A rifle shot cracked from outside. The gunman spun, looking back. Another shot, then pants. A familiar figure appeared in the doorway behind the gunman. Mrs. Hartley, her green dress dusty from hard riding. She held a Winchester rifle. "Hello, Marcus." She addressed the gunman. "Your two friends are down. Not dead, but they won't be shooting anyone tonight." The gunman's knuckles whitened on his shotgun. "Mrs. Hartley, thought you'd run." "I had. Then I realized something." She stepped past him, rifle never wavering. "Running makes me like him. Staying and testifying makes me free." She looked down at her husband. 23 years of marriage. 23 years of watching you destroy people. It ends tonight." Hartley tried to speak, but Emma pressed harder on his neck. His words came out as a wheeze. The gunman calculated odds. A room full of armed townspeople, even if they were shopkeepers. Mr. Hartley's rifle at his back. Jake's Colt pointed at his chest. "This ain't worth dying for." He lowered the shotgun. "We're riding out." "Leave the guns," Jake said. The man set down the shotgun, unbuckled his pistol belt. "Mayor Hartley, consider our contract void." He backed out the door, hands visible. The sound of horses retreating faded into darkness. Mrs. Hartley set down the Winchester, pulled papers from her saddlebag. "Everything's here. Land deeds, forged signatures, records of bribes, even proof about Emma's husband." She looked at Emma. "They shot him on the road to Casper, made it look like bandits. Robert wanted your land for the water rights." Emma's vision blurred. Her grip on Hartley loosened. That's when she felt it. Something sharp pressing through her dress into her thigh. Hartley had worked a piece of broken glass from the shattered window into his palm. He twisted suddenly, violently, slashing upward. The glass opened her arm from wrist to elbow. Blood sprayed across the wall. Emma fell backward, her scream trapped in her ruined throat. Jake's Colt thundered. Once, twice. Hartley jerked, went still. Emma pressed her hand to the wound, blood pulsing between her fingers. The room tilted. Jake dropped beside her, pressing his shirt against the cut. His mouth moved, but she couldn't focus on the words. Doc Wilson shoved him aside, tourniqueting her arm with his belt. The old doctor's face was grim, too grim. She saw him mouth to Jake. "Artery. She's losing too much." Emma's vision darkened at the edges. The last thing she saw was Jake's face above her, his lips forming words she couldn't read. Then nothing. "Heat?" Emma's arm burned like someone held a branding iron to it. Her eyelids weighed too much to open. Cloth stuck to her back, damp with sweat. Something tight wrapped around her upper arm, cutting deep. Voices vibrated through the floorboard beneath her. Male, multiple. One had Jake's, cadence, sharp consonants, dropped G's. Her fingers twitched, trying to sign, but pain shot from wrist to shoulder. Light pierced her eyelids. She forced them open. A ceiling she didn't recognize, clean, white plaster, not the water-stained boards of her house. Her left arm lay wrapped in white bandages from fingertips to above the elbow. Dark stains seeped through near the wrist. Jake sat in a chair beside the bed, head tilted back, sleeping. His left arm was strapped across his chest. Dried blood still caked under his fingernails. Stubble covered his jaw, maybe 2 days' worth. Emma tried to sit up. The room spun. Her good hand gripped the bed frame, knuckles white. The movement rustled the sheets. Jake jerked awake, eyes roosted for a second before focusing on her. His mouth moved her name, probably. He reached for her, stopped just short of touching. She signed with her right hand. How long, Keith? 3 days. His signs came slow and careful. Doc Wilson had to sew the artery. You almost... His hands stopped. Started again. You lost too much blood. Hartley. Dead. I put 2 in his chest. No emotion in his signs. Just fact. Emma noticed other things now. This wasn't Doc Wilson's surgery. Too fancy. The wallpaper had roses on it, Mrs. Patterson's boarding house. Then the good room she saved for important guests. Marshall. Jake's jaw tightened. Arrived yesterday. Took statements. Mrs. Hartley gave him everything, and he stood, walked to the window, his shoulders rigid. When he turned back, his signs came fast. They want you to testify. Federal court in Cheyenne. About the land fraud, Coleman's murder, everything. Emma's fingers found the bandages. Through the cloth, she felt the raised ridge of stitches. When, soon as you can travel, weak, maybe, they want me too. He returned to the chair, sat heavy. There's something else. She waited. Your husband's body. They found it. Where Mrs. Hartley said, shot twice in the back. Jake's signs slowed. His wedding ring was in Hartley's desk. Trophy. Emma's throat constricted. A sound tried to form, grief maybe, or rage. It came out as a wet rasp. Her ruined voice broken like everything else. Jake pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, set it on the bedside table. Her husband's ring glinted inside, cleaned of rust and dirt. The door opened. Doc Wilson entered, carrying his medical bag. Behind him, a tall man in a black suit, federal marshal's badge on his vest, iron gray mustache, eyes like chips of flint. The marshal's lips moved slowly, deliberately, so she could read them. Miss McAllister to James Kennedy, I need your statement. Emma pointed at her bandaged arm, shook her head. Tomorrow, then. Kennedy's eyes shifted to Jake. Morrison, we need to talk. Outside. Jake's hand brushed Emma's shoulder as he stood. She caught his sleeve, signed, What's wrong? He shook his head, followed Kennedy out. Doc Wilson unwrapped her bandages, studied the wound. The cut ran jagged from wrist to elbow, held closed with dozens of black stitches. The skin around it looked angry, red, infected. She signed with her good hand. Doc Wilson shook his head, wrote on his notepad. Healing. But the muscle damage your hand might not work right again. Emma stared at her fingers. They responded slowly when she tried to flex them. The pinky and ring finger barely moved at all. How would she sign? How would she work? Doc Wilson must have seen something in her face. He wrote, Time will tell. Keep it moving, even if it hurts. He rewrapped the arm, tighter this time. The pressure made her teeth clench. Through the window, she saw Jake and Marshall Kennedy in the street below. Kennedy gestured at papers in his hand. Jake's face looked carved from stone. Miss Patterson entered with soup. The boarding house owner's lips moved carefully. Can you eat? Emma nodded, though her stomach felt like a clenched fist. She needed strength. The soup tasted like paste, but she forced it down. Through the window, Kennedy handed Jake what looked like a telegram. Jake read it, crumpled it, threw it in the dirt. Kennedy picked it up, smoothed it out, handed it back. Jake took it, shoved it in his pocket, stalked away. Kennedy looked up, met Emma's eyes through the window. He touched his hat brim, then walked toward the boarding house entrance. Heavy boots on the stairs. Kennedy entered without knocking. Mrs. Patterson fled. Doc Wilson started to protest, but Kennedy's look silenced him. "Doctor, give us a moment." Doc Wilson squeezed Emma's good hand, left reluctantly. Kennedy pulled up Jake's chair, sat close. Too close. His breath smelled of tobacco and coffee. "Miss McAllister, or should I say Mrs. Turner?" Emma kept her face still. "Oh, yes, I know about your marriage. The records in Denver. Your husband, Charles Turner, supposedly abandoned you 3 years ago." Kennedy pulled out a leather notebook. "Except he didn't abandon you. Hartley killed him, and you knew it." Emma's good hand signed, "Just learned, no." Kennedy cut her off. "The seamstress in Laramie says you asked about your husband's route to Casper 2 years ago. The stable hand says you paid him to check the ravine where the body was found. You've been investigating for 2 years. Emma's pulse hammered in her throat. "And Morrison, Jake Morrison, except there's no Jake Morrison from Philadelphia. I checked. No record of him teaching at any deaf school." Kennedy leaned closer. "But there is a Jacob Morris, wanted in Kansas for killing a sheriff." The room tilted. Emma gripped the bed frame. "Different circumstances, of course. That sheriff was beating a deaf boy. Morris intervened. Sheriff died from the beating Morris gave him." Kennedy's eyes never left hers. "Justified, some might say. But the law's the law, and Kansas still wants him." Yet Emma's hand moved to Jake saved. "I know what he did here. Hero stuff. But Kansas has first claim, unless—" Emma waited to "You testify exactly as I say. About Hartley, Coleman, all of it. But nothing about investigating your husband's death. Nothing that suggests premeditation. You were just defending yourself." "And Jake?" "Jacob Morris stays dead. Jake Morrison, hero of Copper Ridge, goes free?" Kennedy stood, straightened his vest. "Think about it. Mrs. Turner, your testimony tomorrow decides both your futures." He walked to the door, paused. "Oh, and that infected arm Doc Wilson's wrong. That red line tracking up toward your shoulder, that's blood poisoning. You've got maybe 2 days before it reaches your heart, unless you get the right medicine." Emma looked at her arm. A faint red line she hadn't noticed before ran under the bandage, disappearing beneath the wrap. "Fortunately, I brought medicine from Cheyenne. Latest stuff from back east." Kennedy patted his coat pocket. "Amazing what cooperation can accomplish." He left. Emma stared at the red line creeping up her arm. Through the window, she saw Jake returning, his face dark with whatever the telegram had said. She tried to sign help with her damaged hand. The fingers wouldn't form the word. Jake's boots hammered up the stairs. Emma pulled the blanket higher, covering the red line creeping up her arm. The door banged open. His face was flushed, jaw clenched tight. His signs came sharp. "Angry. Kennedy says you're sick. Yeah. Says you need medicine." Emma's good hand moved. "I'm fine. Don't lie." He crossed to the bed, yanked the blanket down. The red line showed clearly now, darker than before, approaching her elbow. "Jesus, that's blood poisoning." She pulled the blanket back up. Her damaged fingers twitched, trying to help. Jake sat hard on the bed edge. The mattress dipped, rolling her toward him. "Kennedy has medicine. From Cheyenne. I know. He wants something." Emma's throat worked, producing a grinding whisper. "You—" Jake's eyebrows shot up. First time he'd heard her attempt speech since that night. The sound was ugly broken glass and rust. "He knows who I am." Jake signed. "Jacob Morris, Kansas." Emma nodded. "And he'll let it go if you testify his way." Not a question. Another nod. Jake stood, pressed to the window. 3 steps. "Turn 3 steps back." His shoulder hitched where the bullet wound pulled. "The telegram was from my brother. Lives in Oregon now. Says there's work there. Logging camp needs a bookkeeper who knows sign language. Owner's daughter is deaf." Emma watched his back, the tension in his spine. "Clean start, both of us. Leave tonight. Ride hard for Oregon." He turned. "Doc Wilson would come. Give you the medicine somehow." Emma's good hand signed. Kennedy would follow, maybe, and Kansas. "That warrant?" Jake's hands went still. "Then some things you can't outrun." The red line throbbed with her heartbeat. She felt heat spreading from it, fever starting in her bones. How long did she have? Kennedy said 2 days. But Kennedy lied about everything else. "The sheriff you killed." Emma signed slowly. "The deaf boy he was beaten. What happened to him?" "Dead. Week later, internal bleeding. Doc couldn't stop." Jake's signs turned mechanical. "Boy's name was Timothy. 12 years old. Smart. Could draw anything he saw. Perfect detail. Like Jake's sketches. The ones he used to communicate with her those first weeks." Emma pushed herself up, back against the headboard. Sweat broke on her forehead from the effort. "Show me Kennedy's offer." Jake pulled papers from his pocket. Federal documents, official seals, immunity agreement for Jake Morrison, not Jacob Morris. A new identity, clean record, in exchange for Emma's specific testimony about self-defense, nothing premeditated. She read Kennedy's neat handwriting in the margins. "Mrs. Turner knows the price of refusal." A knock at the door. Doc Wilson entered without waiting for permission, medical bag in hand. His face was grim. He wrote on his pad, "Let me see the arm." Emma extended it. Wilson unwrapped the bandages. The wound itself looked better, less angry red at the edges, but the infection line had spread, branching now like a river delta. Wilson's pencil scratched. "I've seen this before. Day, maybe day and a half." "Kennedy has medicine," Jake signed. Wilson wrote, "What kind to?" "Oh, didn't say." Wilson's face darkened. He wrote quickly, "New sulfur compound from Germany. Only thing that works on blood poisoning this advanced. Maybe 12 doses in the whole territory." Emma felt cold despite the fever starting. Kennedy held her life in his coat pocket. Mrs. Hartley appeared in the doorway, still in the same green dress, now dusty and torn. Dark circles ringed her eyes. "Marshall wants everyone downstairs, taking statements." Jake signed to Emma. "You don't have to." Emma swung her legs off the bed. The room tilted. She gripped the headboard, stood anyway. Her bare feet found the cold floor. Miss Patterson had washed her dress. It hung on the back of the door. Bloodstains faded but visible. "Help me," she signed to Jake. He hesitated, then moved close. His good arm went around her waist. Together they managed to get the dress over her head, buttoned enough to be decent. Her damaged hand couldn't manage the small buttons. The stairs took forever. Each step jarred her arm, sent fire up the infection line. Jake half carried her by the end. The parlor was full. Marshal Kennedy, 2 deputies, Mrs. Hartley, Doc Wilson, Samuel, Thomas, even Billy with his bandaged face. Kennedy had set up at Mrs. Patterson's good table. Papers spread out, ink and pen ready. He smiled when he saw Emma, the kind of smile a snake might give a mouse. "Mrs. Turner, good of you to join us." Emma lowered herself into the chair across from him. Jake stood behind her, hand on her shoulder. "Now then." Kennedy opened his ledger. "Let's discuss what happened the night Mayor Hartley died." Emma's good hand moved to sign, but Kennedy grabbed her wrist. "Speak! I know you can." The sound that came from her throat was barely human. "Can't. You screamed that night. Multiple witnesses heard it. Once." The word tore out like shredded metal. Only once. Kennedy released her wrist, then right. He pushed paper and pen toward her. Emma took the pen in her good hand. The letters came shaky. Hartley attacked me. Self-defense. You investigated your husband's murder for 2 years, gathered evidence, planned revenge. She wrote, no. Kennedy pulled out a leather pouch. Inside, glass vials of clear liquid caught the lamplight. The medicine? He set one vial on the table, rolled it back and forth with one finger. Mrs. Hartley, tell us what you told me about Mrs. Turner's questions, about her visiting the ravine where her husband died. Mrs. Hartley's voice came steady. I don't recall any such thing. Kennedy's smile vanished. You told me yesterday. I was distraught. My husband had just died. I may have been confused. Kennedy turned to Thomas. You saw Mrs. Turner checking records at the land office. Lots of folks check records, part of business. One by one, Kennedy went through the room. Each person claimed ignorance, failed memory, confusion. Even Billy, through his bandages, insisted he knew nothing about Emma investigating anything. Kennedy's face went red. He swept the medicine vials back into the pouch. Fine. Then we do this officially. Jacob Morris, you're under arrest for the murder of Sheriff William Tate in Lawrence, Kansas. Jake's hand tightened on Emma's shoulder. Mrs. Turner, you're under arrest for conspiracy in the murder of Robert Hartley. Doc Wilson stepped forward. She's dying. That infection will kill her without treatment. Then she better cooperate. Kennedy stood, motioned to his deputies. Take them both. The deputies moved forward. One reached for Jake. Jake's hand dropped to his Colt. Don't, Kennedy warned. There's 6 more men outside. Through the window, Emma saw them, federal badges, rifles ready. Jake's hand moved away from the gun. The deputy grabbed his good arm, pulled it behind his back. Metal cuffs clicked. The other deputy approached Emma. She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't hold. The fever was climbing now, making everything shimmer. The deputy pulled her up, started to cuff her. Her damaged hand wouldn't bend right. The deputy forced it, and something in her wrist snapped. Not bone tendon, maybe. She bit through her lip to keep from screaming. Blood filled her mouth. That's when she saw it. Movement in the street beyond Kennedy's men. Riders, lots of them. Coming fast, Kennedy saw them too. His hand went to his pistol. The lead rider came into view, and Emma's fever-bright vision recognized him. The gunman from 3 nights ago, Marcus. The one Mrs. Hartley had driven off. But he wasn't alone. 20 men rode with him, all armed, and they were wearing badges. Marcus dismounted in the street, burrs ringing against the hard pack. The badge on his vest caught sunlight. Texas Ranger. The 20 men with him wore the same. Kennedy's hand hovered over his pistol. This is federal business. No jurisdiction here. Marcus pulled a folded paper from his coat, walked straight past Kennedy's deputies. His boots struck the porch boards. Steady as a funeral drum. Governor of Wyoming asked for our help. Seems federal marshals been exceeding their authority, extorting dying women. He entered the parlor, filled the doorway behind Emma. The deputy holding her wrists stepped back. Release them, Marcus said. Kennedy's face went purple. You have no authority. Special commission. Marcus unfolded the paper. Signed by 3 governors. Wyoming, Colorado, and yes, Kansas. Emma felt Jake go rigid behind her. The metal cuffs clinked as his hands tensed. Marcus continued reading. Investigation into corruption of Federal Marshal James Kennedy. Taking bribes from railroad companies. Falsifying evidence. 3 suspicious deaths of witnesses. Kennedy's deputies exchanged glances. One quietly moved away from Jake. "Lies." Kennedy's voice cracked. "I have orders. From Judge Harriman in Cheyenne." Marcus smiled, no warmth in it. "He was arrested yesterday. Sung like a church choir about your arrangement, how you split the money from seized lands." Emma's vision swam. The infection line burned up her arm, past her elbow now. Her legs gave out. She dropped to her knees, catching herself on her good hand. Blood from her bitten lips spattered the floor. Doc Wilson pushed past everyone, knelt beside her. His fingers found her pulse too fast, thread weak. He looked up at Kennedy. "The medicine. Now." Kennedy backed toward the door. "No." "She testifies my way first." Marcus drew his Colt, casual as breathing. "Doctor asked for medicine. You won't shoot a federal marshal. You're not anymore." Marcus tossed another paper on the table. "Arrest warrant. Your badge means nothing." Kennedy's hand jerked toward his pocket. Not for a gun, for the medicine pouch. His fingers closed on it. Then he threw it, hard, straight at the parlor window. Glass exploded outward. The pouch flew into the street. Emma heard vials breaking on impact. "No." Wilson lunged for the window. Kennedy ran, out the door, shoving past Marcus. His deputies didn't follow. They stood frozen, hands raised, suddenly understanding they'd been backing the wrong man. Marcus walked to the window, looked down, came back shaking his head, all broken, medicine soaking into the dirt. Emma's damaged hand spasmed. The tendons felt like hot wire. She tried to sign, but the fingers wouldn't work. The words came out instead, grinding through her ruined throat. "How?" Doc Wilson's face told her everything. Hours, maybe less. Jake dropped to his knees beside her, still cuffed. His eyes met hers. She saw him making calculations, distances to cities, doctors who might have medicine. "Denver," he said. 4 hours hard riding." "She won't last that long." Wilson's voice broke. Marcus stood over them. "There's another way." Everyone turned. "Cheyenne Military Fort, Army Hospital. They'd have that German medicine." He checked his pocket watch. 2 hours if we commandeer the railroad handcar. One of my men's an engineer. "Kennedy's heading that way," one of his rangers said from the door. "Took a horse." Marcus nodded. "Let him run. We'll deal with him later." He looked down at Emma. "Can you travel?" Emma tried to nod. The movement sent white sparks across her vision. Her good hand found Jake's arm, signed clumsily, "The warrant, Kansas." Marcus saw the gesture. "Jacob Morris is dead. Has been for 3 years. Body found in a river. Identified by personal effects. Kansas is satisfied." Jake's breath caught. "How?" "Mrs. Hartley." Marcus tipped his hat to the woman in green. "Sent word to Austin about Kennedy's corruption 2 weeks ago. We've been investigating since. Found interesting things about lots of people. Some better left buried." Emma's world tilted. Mrs. Hartley had been playing a longer game than anyone knew. The fever setting her bones on fire. She felt her heartbeat in the infection line, each pulse pushing poison higher. Her damaged hand had gone numb past the wrist. Jake's cuffed hands brushed her face. "Stay with me." She tried to focus on his eyes, but they kept doubling. The parlor sounds faded to buzzing. Someone lifted her. Marcus, maybe, or Doc Wilson. Movement and voices, cold air on her face. The handcar sat on the tracks behind Main Street. Someone had cleared it already. They laid her on rough boards, Jake beside her, someone finally removing his cuffs, Doc Wilson climbing aboard with his bag. The car started moving, slow at first, then faster. Wind whipped her hair, cooled the fever for a moment. She turned her head, saw Copper Ridge falling away behind them, the burned skeleton of Doc's house, the telegraph office with its shattered windows. Jake's hand found hers, the good one. His fingers traced letters in her palm. Holdon. She traced back TRY. The handcar picked up speed. Marcus and 3 rangers pumping the lever hard, racing against the poison in her blood. That's when she saw Kennedy. Ahead on the tracks, horse galloping alongside, he had something in his hand. Not a gun, a railroad switch lever. He was riding for the junction ahead, where the tracks split. If he threw that switch while they were crossing it at speed, Emma's mouth opened to scream warning, but no sound came. The handcar flew toward the junction. Kennedy's horse gained ground. His hand reached for the switch. Marcus saw Kennedy first, drew his Colt while still pumping the handcar lever. The shot cracked across the prairie. Kennedy's horse reared. The switch stayed unthrown, but Kennedy kept coming. The junction rushed at them. 50 yards. 40. Kennedy dismounted at full gallop, hit the ground running. His hand grabbed the switch lever. Jake vaulted from the moving handcar. Emma watched him hit the ground hard, roll, come up sprinting. Her fever-bright vision made everything shimmer. The infection line had reached her shoulder now, spreading across her chest like tree roots. 20 yards to the junction. Jake slammed into Kennedy. They went down together, rolling in the gravel beside the tracks. Kennedy's elbow caught Jake's wounded shoulder. Jake's fist connected with Kennedy's jaw. 10 yards. Kennedy broke free, lunged for the switch. His fingers closed on it. Jake grabbed a railroad spike from the ground, brought it down on Kennedy's wrist. Bones cracked. Kennedy screamed, fell back. The handcar flew through the junction. Rails shrieked, but held. Emma turned her head, saw Jake standing over Kennedy's writhing form, getting smaller as the handcar pulled away. Then Marcus was shouting orders. 2 rangers jumping off to help Jake, the rest pumping harder. Doc Wilson's face appeared above her. His lips moved, but she couldn't focus enough to read them. He pulled something from his bag, a leather strap, pushed it between her teeth. The cart hit rough track. Every jolt sent lightning through her infection. She bit down on the leather, tasted oil and sweat. Her damaged hand had gone completely dead, fingers curled like claws. Buildings appeared ahead. Fort Francis E. Warren. The railroad spur ran right to the supply depot. Soldiers scattered as the handcar screamed through without slowing. Marcus pulled the brake lever. Sparks flew from the wheels. The car slewed sideways, stopped hard. Emma rolled. Would have fallen if Wilson hadn't caught her. Soldiers surrounded them, rifles raised. A lieutenant pushed through. What the hell? Medical emergency. Marcus flashed his ranger badge. This woman needs the hospital now. The lieutenant looked at Emma, her gray skin, the visible infection line creeping up her neck. Jesus! Blood poisoning. Bad. She needs sulfanilamide. Don't know if we... Find out. Marcus lifted Emma. Her head lolled back. Saw sky spinning. Where's the hospital? This way. Running now. Marcus's arms around her. Wilson beside them. Soldiers ahead, clearing the path. Through doors into carbolic smell and white walls. An older man in a stained apron, the fort surgeon. Put her here. Metal table. Cold through her dress. The surgeon cut away her sleeve, exposed the infection. It had spread in branches across her shoulder, reaching for her heart. How long? 3 days since the wound. Infection started yesterday. Too late for standard treatment. The surgeon opened a cabinet, pulled out a green glass bottle. This is experimental. From Berlin. Might kill her faster than the infection. Wilson grabbed the bottle, read the label. Prontosil. I've heard of it. 3 cases so far. 2 lived. The surgeon filled a syringe. Hold her. Hands pressed down on Emma's shoulders, hips, legs. The needle went into her upper arm. Fire followed it. Different from infection. Clean somehow, purposeful. Again. Another injection. Another. That's all I can give without stopping her heart. Emma's chest seized. Couldn't breathe. her back arched off the table. Wilson's hands on her foie, trying to hold her still. The leather strap fell from her mouth, sound tore from her throat. Not a scream, just raw noise, then nothing. Floating, dark, quiet like she'd always known, but deeper. No vibrations, no light behind her eyelids. Was this dying? Something pulled at her, hands on her chest, pushing. Rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4. Stop. Air forced into her lungs. Again, light crept in. Shadows moving above her. The surgeon's mouth. Back! She's back! Pain returned with consciousness, but different. The burning infection line had gone cold. Her fingers, she could feel them again. Damaged still, tendons torn, but alive. Jake's face appeared. When had he arrived? Blood crusted his knuckles. His signs came slow. Careful. You died? 2 minutes? She tried to sign back to. Her damaged hand managed a partial motion. Jake caught it, helped her form the words, still here. Kennedy's arrested. Rangers have him. Jake's eyes stayed on hers. Mrs. Hartley's testimony will clear everything. You're free. Free. Emma tested the word. It felt strange. Impossible. The surgeon leaned in. The medicine's working, but you're not safe yet. Next 12 hours will tell. Doc Wilson took her pulse, nodded. Stronger. Still fast, but stronger. They moved her to a bed. Real mattress. Clean sheets. The luxury felt wrong after everything. Through the window, she saw the sun dropping toward the mountains. Had it only been hours since Kennedy threw the medicine, Jake sat beside the bed. His good hand found hers. No signing now, just contact. Marcus appeared in the doorway. Got a telegram from Copper Ridge. Town council met. They want you both back. Job offers. Sheriff for Jake. Seamstress shop for you. Full backing. Emma's damaged fingers twitched. She looked at Jake. His jaw tightened. We'll see. Oregon's still there, Marcus said. That logging camp, your choice. He left them alone. The room filled with sunset light, painting everything gold. Emma's fever had broken, leaving her soaked and shivering. Jake pulled the blanket higher, careful of her bandaged arm. She freed her good hand, signed, What do you want? He thought for a long moment, then signed back, Place where no one knows Jacob Morris, or Jake Morrison, just Jake. And me, place where you can be heard without speaking. Her throat made a sound, might have been a laugh if her voice worked. She signed, Together. If you want. She studied his face, the exhaustion, the pain from his shoulder, the careful hope in his eyes. Her good hand moved Oregon. He nodded. Oregon. Through the window, a train whistle sounded, the evening westbound. Tomorrow, there would be another, and another after that. But first, she had to survive the night. The infection line on her arm had stopped spreading, but she felt it waiting, coiled like a snake. The medicine fighting it, poison against poison. Jake's hand tightened on hers. She closed her eyes and held on. Connecting communities. I watched them board that westbound train 3 days later. Emma's arm still wrapped thick with bandages. Jake favoring his wounded shoulder. No crowds came to see them off. Just Doc Wilson and Mrs. Hartley, standing quiet on the platform. Emma's damaged hand couldn't form all the signs anymore, but Jake understood her anyway. They'd developed their own language in those hospital nights, part gesture, part touch, part something deeper than words. The train whistle shrieked, and Emma didn't hear it, but she felt it vibrate through the platform boards. She turned back once, nodded to the town that had broken and remade them both. Oregon waited with its logging camps and deaf children needing teachers. Not a fairy tale ending. Emma would never sign properly again. Jake would always look over his shoulder for badges. But sometimes broken people find ways to fit their jagged edges together. That's all any of us really do, isn't it? Disclaimer, this story is a work of fiction inspired by Western frontier narratives, created solely for entertainment purposes. This narrative does not condone, encourage, or promote any form of violence, discrimination, or harmful behavior toward any individual or group. All characters, events, and circumstances depicted are products of imagination. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or deceased, or actual events is purely coincidental. The portrayal of historical settings and social attitudes reflects the time period for narrative purposes only and does not represent endorsed viewpoints.